Way back in June, I created positional trade value dynasty charts on flockfantasy.com, and I just made a sweeping update because a lot has happened since then. We've had training camps, we've had, preseason games approaching. So in today's video, to showcase these trade value charts, I'm going to go over my top 5 positional buys at each position: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end, showing you guys what you should pay for them, what I value them as, and kind of the difference in their market value versus what I think you can get them for. So if you guys want access to these charts, of course, sign up on flockfantasy.com. Use the promo code FSC for 30% off to get first priority to Dynasty Decisions videos, our season-long draft guide, the Redraft Rankings Manifesto 2.0 with a ton of great content in there. And if you guys sign up annually on Flock Fantasy, you'll also get a free Zoom consultation with myself or with Danny to talk about whatever you want to talk about: fantasy related, keeper related, dynasty related, whatever you want to talk about, we will go through that with you. But enough plugs, let's get right into the video. All right, so as I mentioned in the intro, these charts are meant to help you guys out so that when I say to buy player X, you know exactly how much player X is going for and how much I value them as, so you know how much is too much to trade for them. Because I think a lot of the times people just say buy this player, they don't give you any insight on how much you should pay for them or anything like that. So ideally, we want to be buying these players for slightly less than what I have them valued as. Hence why they're in this video, because right now you can get them for slightly less than what I have them valued as according to Keep Trade Cut, which is the market value reference that we are using right now. So on our site, flockfantasy.com, these are done in Superflex formats, and I also have at the end of the trade value charts them available in one quarterback leagues as well. So whatever format you play in, you should be able to find what you're looking for. So let's kick this off with the running back position, because they are generally the most fun position to talk about. You guys can see my top 5 trade targets at the running back position. These are guys that I am currently buying. I want to remind you that if you are buying a running back, you better be in a competitive window. Do not buy any running backs if you are rebuilding. If you're in a house money situation, maybe you could trade for these guys as well. But in June's video, when I broke this down the first time, I talked about some really high-end guys: Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor. Those guys are still viable trade targets if you want to go out for them. But if you don't quite have the capital, the ammunition to go for them, I'm going to go after these 5 running backs here. So since news and buzz and all that stuff has come out, we have some new guys that have emerged. Travis Etienne is the main one, because I think it's really timely, knowing that we're getting all this Tank Bigsby hype. He's repeatedly being hyped for his ability to catch the ball and his ability to run between the tackles. The coaching staff seems to really like Tank Bigsby. But let's look at the facts here. Travis Etienne, former first-round pick, third-year running back, going up against a third-round rookie in Tank Bigsby in this offense this year. This offense could be elite. Trevor Lawrence, 6th in MVP voting right now. He's 24 years old, Travis Etienne, with 3 years of team control left. So from a long-term perspective, you're getting a guy in a multi-year competitive window that should be viable for a couple years here as a great RB1 or high-end RB2 option. Let's say that the Jacksonville Jaguars deploy a committee approach, because Doug Peterson is there. They seem to like Tank Bigsby to some degree. This offense can support multiple running backs, especially if Etienne in the committee is like a 60-70% timeshare guy, which most running backs who are lead backs are anyway. He's still young. He's still talented. He's a solid pass catcher. He can break off long runs. All Travis Etienne should cost you right now in a trade is a mid-first and a mid-third, according to Keep Trade Cut. Right now, I value him as a mid-first and a mid-second. So there is a little bit of a buying window, a little bit of wiggle room there on Travis Etienne. If you guys are trying to compete, if you're looking to build out your running back core for a competitive team, now is the time to buy on Travis Etienne. The next guy that we're going to talk about here is Josh Jacobs. The holdout threat is scaring people off, and it has presented a buying window for those of you guys that are in the position to buy a competitive running back. Jacobs has absolutely no leverage, so I am not concerned that he's going to hold out into the season. And right now, you can get a mid-RB1 projected player in Josh Jacobs for just a singular 2024 first and, a little small piece, a fourth, according to Keep Trade Cut right now. His production and the fact that he's just 25 years old with a few more years left in the tank, he's ultra talented. He just finishes the RB3 overall last year. Imagine if he gets a short-term deal from the Raiders after this season, or maybe he goes off in free agency and signs like a Miles Sanders-like contract. He is a 2 to 3 year window, top 15 running back projection. That's pretty hard to find for just a singular 2024 first, and he has a slightly deflated price right now given the fact that he's holding out and people are uncertain about that situation. So if your, resident Josh Jacobs manager is concerned, definitely fire out some offers for him. The next guy is Javonte Williams. Normally, I wouldn't be saying to buy Javonte Williams right now because I expected him to come into the season on the PUP list. I expected him to be out for the beginning of the season, coming off a multi-ligament ACL tear, but this guy is crushing his rehab. He keeps hitting checkpoints. I think now is the perfect time to buy because even though he still presents some risk because he could aggravate the ACL tear, he could suffer a compensation injury. But let's look at the scoreboard right now. He clears the PUP for training camp. That was checkpoint 1. Then he gets cleared for contact immediately. When the pads came on, he was out there, and that was checkpoint number 2. He's going to play in preseason games. According to head coach Sean Payton, the ramp-up is likely going to happen at the beginning of the season. They're probably not going to force-feed this guy a huge workload, but it looks like Javonte Williams, by all indications, is healthy enough to be like 90%, close to 100%. The offense and the coaching is hugely upgraded since Sean Payton came in. He could be a league winner down the stretch at just 23 years old. And he's available right now for a contender's late first-round pick. So if you guys are contenders, you're looking for a 2 to 3 year window projection at running back who could end up, really accumulating some value as well. Javonte Williams definitely is your guy. Now let's do 2 guys rapid fire, Dameon Pierce and J.K. Dobbins. Dameon Pierce is a high-end RB2 projection this year. Probably not a very good offense, but what happens if C.J. Stroud, acclimates to the NFL pretty quickly? He played in a big conference in college. He was very productive there, and he took over the job quickly. Heading into 2024, C.J. Stroud, when he isn't a rookie, could be a legitimate breakout candidate quarterback, and this should be a well-coached team with this 49ers scheme coming in, who is very friendly to running backs and Dameon Pierce specifically, and the Texans have already stuck to Dameon Pierce by, bypassing some of the big free agents and then bypassing a very deep running back class where they could have drafted, some of these higher-end guys. Imagine getting a 23-year-old running back in Dameon Pierce and a potentially ascending offense midway through the season when C.J. Stroud starts to figure things out, with 3 more years of team control for your 109 to 112. I think he's a really good buy, a good kind of like middle ground between buying a strictly contending running back and buying a strictly rebuilding running back, which usually doesn't exist. You get a young running back with multiple years of a projection who has a chance to go up in value. If he has another great season this year, he was obviously on a tear before he got injured last year. J.K. Dobbins, the other guy that we're talking about here, he is trying to hold in for a new deal. Again, he doesn't have any leverage. He knows he's got to go out and prove it in the NFL. Reportedly, he's expected back soon, according to a report yesterday from John Harbaugh. I'm using this window of unknown for J.K. Dobbins as the best buy low opportunity that we've had for the last couple years on him, and he is the most efficient running back since 2020 when he entered the league. This is a guy that has legitimately, routinely been well over 5 yards a carry, 6 yards per touch, despite playing hurt most of last year. He was coming off of a multi-ligament ACL tear, and he was not healthy, unlike Javonte Williams. He had a cleanup procedure and all that stuff. Per keep trade cut, you may not even have to pay a late first for J.K. Dobbins right now. You might be able to get him for an early second rounder and an early third rounder if you guys have those picks at your disposal. So J.K. Dobbins, a guy that if you're contending is a perfect like RB2 behind your like Bijan Robinson or your Jonathan Taylor anchor. I think J.K. Dobbins is a great guy to go after, and I traded for him a couple months ago behind my Bijan Robinson share as well. So the quarterback position, let's move on to that position. Remember, this is from a super flex standpoint, so quarterbacks are going to have more value, but in the trade value charts, we have one quarterback values there as well. The 2 major guys from June's video are still probably the best 2 trade targets at the quarterback position, Deshaun Watson and Kyler Murray. But all of these 5 guys showed up as good values as well. Lamar Jackson, Tua Tagovailoa, Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson, and Brock Purdy. Let's start with Lamar Jackson because he is the most expensive. I have him valued right now as 3 first-round picks. There's a new offensive scheme coming in, better weapons. It's really easy to just project Lamar Jackson to do what he's done and probably then some. The only reason people are off of Lamar Jackson is health and, narratives keeping his price down. Imagine getting a 23 to 25 point per game quarterback season out of Lamar, who's still young enough to do this for multiple years, and all you paid is your first this year, your first next year, and a second round pick, because that's currently what his price is according to Keep Trade Cut. Maybe the other manager wants a quarterback back, and you can upgrade from a Tua Tagovailoa or a Dak Prescott or a CJ Stroud or somebody like that, and all you have to add is 1 first round pick to get to Lamar Jackson. To me, that is absolutely a steal, and the market says it's possible right now. People are not high on Lamar. Don't ask me why, because I have him valued as 3 first-round picks, but I'm just reporting that he is definitely a guy that you can buy on the cheap right now. Tua Tagovailoa, another guy that I think is coming at a bit of a deflated cost. If I told you that Tua Tagovailoa was healthy and he didn't really suffer any concussions for the next 3 years, he would probably be like an early second-round startup pick. The injury risk with Tua is baked into the fact that you can get this guy in like the 3rd round, 4th round, sometimes 5th round of startups. He has elite weapons. He has Tyreek Hill, he has Jalen Waddle, he has a great offensive scheme and great coaching with Mike McDaniel. The offense was absolutely on fire when Tua was out there, and I think we're kind of forgetting that. If we go back, rewind to midway through last season when Tua was on fire, this was a guy that was being valued over Deshaun Watson, over Kyler Murray, over some of these guys, and while I didn't agree at the time, that just shows you the value accumulation potential that Tua Tagovailoa has. I think it's very plausible to get him for the price that I have listed on the screen. A 1st and a 3rd is all he's currently going for on Keep Trade Cut, and if the Tua manager wants a quarterback back, all you probably have to do to get to Tua is take Geno Smith or take, some of the quarterbacks in that area, Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, add yourself a late 1st to that deal, and maybe you can get up to Tua because somebody is concerned with the injury risk. I have him valued as like a 1st rounder plus, a guy that you should have to pay a 1st and a 2nd for, and right now you can get him for a 1st and a 3rd or a 1st rounder on top of a middling quarterback. So Kirk Cousins, another guy that I think is very, very good, especially for those of you guys that are contenders right now. Obviously, you wouldn't be buying him if you weren't a contender. His redraft outlook is so strong this year, and to be honest, he's a better redraft projection than most of the pocket quarterbacks that you get later in the drafts. I would rather have Kirk Cousins than Dak Prescott from a redraft perspective. I'd rather have him than Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Geno Smith, all of those guys, because his offense has great weapons. They just cut their starting running back, and they are going to throw like fucking crazy. They're going to be up near 700 pass attempts. He's got a good offensive line. Kirk Cousins is still young enough that he's got 2 to 3 more years left in the tank. Keep Trade Cut says you won't even have to pay a 1st for this guy. You can get him at the end, with a 2nd and a 3rd, like I did back in March when I traded for him. And you could get a back-end QB1 for the next 2 to 3 years, throwing to guys like Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson. Kirk Cousins is a guy that if you are a contender and you only have one great quarterback, or maybe you're in a situation like me, one of my contending teams has Justin Fields, Brock Purdy, and Sam Howell. I don't really have a stabilized quarterback too. Unfortunately, the guy that has Kirk Cousins is really competing in that league, so I'm not able to trade for him. But if you are able to trade for Kirk Cousins on the cheap for a contender right now, you should absolutely be doing it. Last two that we have at this position are Russell Wilson and Brock Purdy. These guys are a little riskier, but they definitely could pay off big. If Russell Wilson, from a contending standpoint, gets back to Russell Wilson play and what we saw from him the 10 previous seasons that he's been in the NFL when he was a future Hall of Famer, he will surely be a back-end quarterback one with Sean Payton calling the shots. And in my opinion, if that happens, he still has 3 to 4 years, maybe 4 or 5 years left in the tank if Russell Wilson can get himself back to his previous play. You guys can see the price tag for Russell Wilson on the screen right now. You might not have to pay a 1st rounder for him either. A 2nd and a 3rd rounder, or maybe a young upside wide receiver that's performing in camp plus a 2nd rounder right now should be enough to get it done for him. Brock Purdy, another guy, if he is 100%, he's got the 49ers starting job on lockdown. I think there's zero chance that they're going to start Trey Lance over this guy. Assuming he's healthy, he's a starting quarterback who's like 22 years old with an embarrassment of weapons around him, with Kittle, with Debo, with McCaffrey, with Ayuk, with all of these guys. He could be easily a back-end quarterback one in terms of production like we saw from him down the stretch last year. And if you're a rebuilder, you can use that to accumulate value because he could be like a 4th, 5th round, 3rd round startup pick this time next year. Or if you're a contender, he's a good quarterback 3 to go after if you potentially are waiting on a guy like Kyler Murray, or you don't have a high upside quarterback 2 in your lineup right now. So definitely go out and buy those 2 running backs and quarterbacks. Before we get into the wide receivers and the tight ends of this video, I want to take a few moments to shout out our sponsors, Aura. You guys have heard me talk about them before, but they are your one-stop shop for cybersecurity for you and your families. Aura's app features a VPN, a password manager, real-time credit and identity theft monitoring, including 24-hour US-based call centers, internet parental controls. They protect your devices from malware. Aura has almost every internet safety tool that you will ever need, all inside one app. And it's really easy to set up. It has everything you need, so you don't have to download 7 different apps to get yourself parental controls, antivirus protection, identity theft protection, transaction monitoring, a VPN. All that stuff is available at one affordable price. And one of Aura's best features is their ability to opt you out from data brokers and telemarketing lists as well. The internet's got a ton of information out there. If you guys search your own names, you'll probably see that some of your information has been exposed. Your email address, your name, all that other stuff could be available on the internet right now. And this information is accessible because of data brokers who profit by selling your information to robocallers, to telemarketers, spammers, and anybody else that wants to learn more about you. I'm sure you guys have gotten telemarketing calls and telemarketing texts in the past. It's incredibly frustrating. And thanks to Aura, Aura, you can identify these data brokers and have them stop exposing your information. They will submit opt-out requests for you on your behalf, and they'll opt you out of junk mail and telemarketing lists as well. And right now you can use my link, aura.com/fantasy stock exchange, to try 2 weeks for free to see how many data brokers are sharing your information. You'd be surprised at how much they can get accomplished in that 2-week trial. Also linked down below in the description of this video, or you can scan the QR code that you see on your screen. Or also monitors your emails and passwords as well to see if they were involved in any kind of data breaches or exposed on the dark web, and it gives you recommendations on which passwords to change, which ones are safe. A lot of people out there probably just use one password or a couple of passwords for everything when it comes to their banking, their social medias, all that stuff. If those passwords get breached, it can become a huge problem. You'll be shocked at how much of your private information Aura finds exposed over that 2-week trial. Like I said, aura.com/fantasy stock exchange to start that 2-week free trial. Link down below in the description, in the pinned comment, or you can scan the QR code that you see on your screen. Now let's get back into the video. The wide receivers and tight end buys. There has not been much movement at the top for the wide receiver trade targets. So Drake London and T. Higgins, in my opinion, are still the best values among elite guys. But I do have a couple more wide receiver options, 5 buys. Some of them are contending. Some of them are rebuilding. Some of them kind of accomplish both. For contenders, you should look no further right now. If you're looking for wide receiver production, then Davante Adams. Adams has not only been a great wide receiver over the course of his career, he's been a future Hall of Famer. And elite fantasy wide receivers do not come for the price tag of a singular first-round pick very often, because that is how much you can get Davante Adams for, and he's already beaten every narrative that we could have possibly had for him last year. We all said, or some of you guys said, he's only good with Aaron Rodgers. He's not going to be as good with Derek Carr as his quarterback. Well, he scored 14 touchdowns and over 20 points per game last year, so he obviously squashed that narrative. He performed when Jarrett Stidham was the quarterback last year, so I think Jimmy Garoppolo is basically going to be the same thing. He can be as good as Derek Carr was last year. And Adams is still one of the best 3 or 4 wide receivers in the entire NFL. I think he's a better receiver than pretty much everybody not named Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and Tyreek Hill. Realistically, it should cost you a mid-first round pick and a mid-second to get him, but instead, all it costs you is a singular first-round pick, according to Keep Trade Cut right now. So if you're a contender, you need some upgraded production, go out and send an offer for Davante Adams. And similarly, you can say the same thing about Cooper Kupp, because he might be a little bit more expensive, but he's definitely still very affordable for the production he can give you. And some of you guys might be thinking this because you might know that I'm lower on Cooper Kupp in redraft, but he's absolutely a great buy in Dynasty. The answer for why I'm lower on him in redraft, but I like him in Dynasty, is the cost, because in redraft, you have to spend like the 4th or 5th overall pick on this guy, but in Dynasty, all you have to spend on him is like a mid-first and a late third to get him onto your roster, and long-term, his game should age pretty well with, the Keenan Allen kind of archetype that he has. Going to be a slot receiver, probably very good into his early 30s. So Cooper Kupp, a guy that I think you can get right now for a mid-first and a late third, according to Keep Trade Cut. I think he should be more valued as a first and a second, if not a little bit more than that potentially. So if you're in a league that heavily values wide receivers, he might be a little bit more expensive than that. But in a PPR league where you have, the opportunity to put him into your contending lineup, he is an absolutely smash buy, him and Adams both. So switching to a rebuilder, if you guys are a rebuilding team, Jordan Addison is a great buy for this situation. He may have still some of the stink from his speeding ticket on him. FF lawyer Drew Davenport, it says it's extremely unlikely he sees any kind of discipline, any kind of repercussions for that situation. But for some reason still, people are baking that into his cost. People are just, it's a sour taste in their mouth. And to the point that Jordan Addison was already undervalued before that happened, and now he's even more undervalued, making a great discount period. Check out his tail of the tape if you guys want to know what I thought about him as a prospect, but he was right there with JSN for me as a top tier mid wide receiver 1 talent coming out of USC and Pittsburgh. If you're rebuilding, you probably don't want to give up like a 2024 first for him because you want to hold on to those picks. But if you can sell contending assets like Kenneth Walker, Josh Jacobs, Austin Eckler, Tony Pollard, Daniel Jones, Ramondre Stevenson, or any aging wide receivers that I mentioned with Cooper Kupp and Adams and all those guys, Jordan Addison is a fantastic buy if you guys are rebuilding a dynasty team. Marquise Brown and Chris Godwin are the last 2 wide receiver buys I'm going to talk about. Those guys are perfect for those of you guys turning the corner from rebuilder to contender, or if you're in a really deep starting roster league and you need depth, you need wide receiver talent, you need flex plays, whatever. Both of these guys are high target earners. Marquise Brown specifically was elite in that area before DeAndre Hopkins came back from suspension. And you guys have heard me talk about this already. I am of the belief that Kyler Murray will not sit out the entire season. He'll probably be back by October, by November at the very latest. And once that happens, Marquise Brown is the perfect flex. He's going to get a number of targets. Even if it's a bad offense, he still has PPR upside. And once Kyler comes back, he's got big play upside. He has the ability to get better as the season goes along. And long term, we don't exactly know what his contract situation is, but Marquise Brown, as of now, could be a free agent. He could stay with the Cardinals and sign a long-term deal. Maybe he has Caleb Williams throwing him the ball on a mega free agent deal. So we don't know what to expect with Hollywood Brown right now, but I do know he's a good receiver that can command targets, and he's still young. So he's definitely a guy that I'm absolutely willing to buy right now. His price point is a little bit lower than a late first-round pick. Right now, you can get Hollywood Brown plus for a late first-rounder if you're a contender. Definitely send those trades out if you can. And then Chris Godwin, I mean, he pretty much played on one leg last year, and he was still a top 15 wide receiver in points per game, as he's been, by the way, for the last 4 seasons in a row. This guy's uber consistent, and if you're thinking, oh, the Bucs are going to stink this year, I don't want Chris Godwin, I get it, but here's the thing. They were already bad last year, and he was a top 15 wide receiver playing through an injury. So we've already dealt with the fact that Chris Godwin is not going to be the best, most elite upside fantasy pick because Baker Mayfield's not very good. I understand that, but he can definitely still be a wide receiver too, and he's still young enough that if they draft a stud quarterback a year from now, or if they trade for a quarterback or they sign a quarterback, then he is going to be a huge, huge value on the market right now. If new offensive coordinator Dave Canales can scheme up some open looks, unlike Byron Leftwich did, trust me, I watched this team intently. They're my favorite team. Godwin is going to eat. He's the easiest target to hit of the main options there, and also he was once very explosive. He was very good after the catch. Just recent injuries have caused us to forget that about him. He was the A.J. Brown and Deebo Samuel archetype before those guys were even around, and he's a perfect flex play who's still very young. Situation's really the only concern with him. And that can change quickly if they draft a stud quarterback or if they trade for a quarterback or if they sign a quarterback this time next year. Sell your late first if you guys are contenders and need depth for Chris Godwin plus a cherry on top. You can probably get Chris Godwin and a handcuff like Jalen Warren or A.J. Dillon for your late first round pick, and I would absolutely do a move like that. So finally, let's get into the tight end position, and we'll talk about some of the biggest buys at this position. Obviously, Kyle Pitts is still the biggest buy. He's such a stud, and he's being held down by situation. I broke him down in the last Dynasty trade targets video, the 5 trade targets at every position that I did in June. So if you want to get the Pitts spiel, you can definitely check that video out. Not a ton has changed at this position. In the last video, I also discussed George Kittle and David Njoku, and I'm going to go over them again because I do think they're still excellent buys for contenders. And they don't. If you guys don't have the ammunition to go after Andrews or go after Kelsey, these are the next best thing in my opinion. George Kittle saw his touchdown upside finally be realized once Brock Purdy took over this offense. Once he started games, in the 7 games at the end of the regular season that Brock Purdy started, George Kittle scored 7 touchdowns to close out the season. And for reference, those 7 touchdowns are more than George Kittle has scored in any other full season of his entire career. So the fact that Purdy's willing to use him in the red zone more than previous quarterbacks like Garoppolo and Trey Lance were definitely bodes well for George Kittle. He's still got 2 to 3 years left of great football in the tank. He's pound for pound one of the best tight ends in the NFL, probably the 2nd or 3rd best tight end in the league, and he has explosive week-winning upside, and there's zero reason he should be this much cheaper than Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews, and for some reason he is, so definitely go out and trade for George Kittle. He is the premier trade target if you guys are contending and are in need of a tight end upgrade. Next, we get into David Njoku, who is not quite to the level of George Kittle, but definitely has the upside to be there. Deshaun Watson's real only bright spot when he was starting last year was the fact that him and David Njoku had a decent connection, and I think Njoku can absolutely be unlocked by Deshaun Watson. Apparently, the connection's going well in camp, and Njoku's a great upside option to really, really accumulate value and also give you top 6, top 5 production. Because realistically, Amari Cooper is the only lockdown number 1 target there, and even him, he's dealt with injuries. He's a little bit older. I really think that David Njoku could have a breakout season this year, and right now, all it takes to get him is an early second, which according to Keep Trade Cut is actually more than you'd have to pay for David Njoku, and I think that he should be valued as like an early second rounder plus, and in a tight end premium league, I'd be okay giving up a late first rounder for him. So David Njoku, definitely a great buy as well, and then Greg Dulcich is my last like main buy of this position. He is an excellent buy if you guys are rebuilding. How often do we talk about tight ends needing time to develop? Pretty much all the time, right? Anytime we talk about a young tight end, we always talk about the fact that it takes them time to develop in the NFL. We never see rookie tight ends do what Greg Dulcich does. He came out and he beat out the veteran ahead of him in Albert O. Midway through the season, despite dealing with injury for most of training camp, he was a triple threat when he was on the field. He got the targets, he got the red zone targets, he got the deep targets, so valuable targets and high-end percent of his team's routes. He was running like a top 5 route participation as a rookie despite dealing with injury to start the season. What we want out of our rookie tight ends and our young tight ends if we're rebuilding is guys like Greg Dulcich, and Sean Payton can unlock this offense, and Dulcich might legitimately be their second best pass catcher behind Jerry Jeudy. And we know from the Tight End League Winners video that I did a couple weeks ago, we want tight ends that have the ability to be the first or the second target on their offense, and Dulcich absolutely has that ability. And then if you guys are a more bargain bin hunting at the tight end position, here's 2 cheapies for either team situation as well. Dalton Schultz, if you guys are contending and you need a tight end, might be the number 1 or the number 2 there in Houston behind Nico Collins. Go send a mid to late second rounder for him if you're contending. I think he can have a good season this year, maybe re-sign with the Texans and be a long-term fixture for CJ Stroud. This offense is very conducive to tight ends. We've seen what it's done for George Kittle, and if Schultz, who's on a 1-year prove-it deal right now, has a good connection with CJ Stroud, he might be there long-term, and if Stroud's a good quarterback, that would obviously be good for Schultz as well. And then if you guys are rebuilding and you want like a dirt cheap guy to go off and potentially accumulate some value for you, Tucker Kraft of the Green Bay Packers is still, in my opinion, a vastly superior prospect to what Luke Musgrave represented. So even though Luke Musgrave is the one getting the hype right now, Tucker Kraft, in my opinion, was the better prospect. He is literally free. He might be on your waiver wires. He might be available for a late 4th round pick. You can probably get him for nothing, and he's a good stash for those of you guys that are rebuilding. So if you enjoyed this video, if you got some value from it, leave a like down below, subscribe if you're new around here. Comment any of your trade questions down below. I will get to every comment that you leave. So if you feel like you got a question, leave it down below. If you don't have a question, just give us a comment anyway. Appreciate the comments for the algorithm. And also, if you want to check out our sponsor, Aura, of course, I talked about them throughout the video. For 2-week free trial using our promo code, using our link. You guys can see that in the pinned comment and in the description. And of course, check out flockfantasy.com. Promo code FSE will get you 30% off, a free Zoom consult if you sign up annually. First priority to Dynasty decisions. All of our rankings, Dynasty, Redraft, Rookie, all that stuff available on flockfantasy.com. And right now, like I said, you can get a free Zoom consultation if you sign up annually. So definitely check all that stuff out. If it interests you, of course, also check out our sponsor, Underdog Fantasy, as well. If you want to get our season-long draft guide for free, all you have to do is sign up on Underdog Fantasy using the promo code FSE and sign up with a $10 deposit. You'll get our season-long redraft rankings manifesto for free and our weekly rankings during the season to help you with your start-sit decisions. So check out all that stuff in the link in the description. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.